Hello and welcome to the Irish Film London podcast. I am your host, Niamh Monaghan, and I am joined with the head of Irish Film London, Jerry Maguire. How are you, Jerry?
Yeah, not too bad, Niamh. Nice to talk to you again.
You too. So loads have happened, has happened over in London. We had loads of Irish Film London screenings over the last while. How did they go?
We have indeed. We had all of our screenings for our series, The Irish for Hope, in the last couple of weeks. They went really well, you know. We started off with Wolf Walkers and the Dating Amber on our first weekend.
And you had a Q&A for that as well.
I did. I had Kieron Roche, who kindly came up and joined us for the Q&A for that. And a really interesting artist who works for Fringe Film Festival in London called Kai Fiine, who came and hosted that for us. And that was a nice wee discussion, which we've recorded. And with everyone's permission, hopefully we'll get out to you sometime in the future. And we had a break of a week or so, and then we went to the Bertha Dock House and did a screening of Songs for While I'm Away, Emer Reynolds' Phil Lynott documentary, which has been an RTE1 in the meantime, I think. It has, in fact, because I was doing some work at home in Fermanagh last week, and it came on the telly, and it was quite surreal to see it on the telly after having watched it in the cinema the same week. So we had that, and then last weekend gone by, we had our last two, which was the 8th, with a Q&A with Aidan Kane, one of the directors, Alva Smith and Andrea Horan. And then we finished out the programme with a selection of short films. So we had 8 short films, which we played on Sunday, the 21st, I think. Yeah, it went really well, Niamh. It went so well at Bertha Dock House that we got 2 extra bookings for Songs for While I'm Away over this weekend gone by. So
fantastic.
This bank holiday weekend in London has seen the film on in the Dock House screen at Curzon Bloomsbury 2 more times. So that's a big success. Really, really nice feedback from people who attended. We had lots of filmmakers in for the short screening. A lot of us went for dinner on Sunday night together, filmmakers and stuff. So it was that was really nice.
Yeah.
It's been nice. It's been nice.
So a nice little tester in the waters for our future events.
First time back in the cinema for IFL since November 2019. So wow. Yeah, it was really, really nice to do it. Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, fantastic. I'm so glad it went well. And there's a lot is happening. Nearly every week there seems to be a new Irish film releasing, which is amazing. So we had The Bright Side, and now we have Redemption of a Rogue is also released this week. There was also The Boys from County Hell, and you were saying there's a few more as well. It's just kind of nonstop.
Oh, September's got a good Irish film out near enough every week. I think Friday the 17th of September, I think it's 17th, I must check. It's got 3 Irish films out on the same day in UK cinemas, and well, hopefully in most places. But I think, so we've got Wildfire coming out on September 3rd. And then we've got on that weekend of the 17th, I know that we've got Rose Plays Julie, and we've got Mark Cousins' new film, The Story of Looking, on the same day, and a little film with an Irish director called A Brixton Tale is out that day as well. That played at Galway earlier this year. So yeah, loads of stuff happening. There's a new Irish film out near enough every week for people to dive into.
Amazing. I was looking at the news on Screen Ireland this week, and I saw that they have a new scheme out called X-Pollinator. It's kind of a follow-up from their 2020 scheme Incubator, and this one is called Elevator. And It's a new development program to seek out and to identify and support up to 20 emerging diverse female and non-binary writers and directors. So I just thought that was amazing and definitely wanted to give that a shout out on here today.
That sounds really cool. Is that open right now?
Yeah, exactly. So it's open to kind of, unfortunately, the still underrepresentation in gender diversity amongst writers and directors across the industry. Mm-hmm. So Elevator will be there to kind of help female and non-binary talent. So it's really cool. They're really kind of pushing it, which is fantastic. So that's definitely, if anyone is interested in that, take a look.
Sounds like a good scheme. I must check that out. I'm obviously not eligible But like, it sounds like a good scheme. It's worth keeping abreast of these things as well, you know.
Exactly. And Jerry, did you have any cinema trips this week or in the last 2 weeks?
So I've been hanging out with my kids this last week and sort of like doing a bit less work, or working more in the evenings actually. So my one cinema trip was to go to see the Paw Patrol movie.
Oh.
Yeah. So 5 stars. 5
Oh,
stars.
of course.
Yeah. 5 stars for it managing to keep my 2 kids and my 2 nephews busy for 88 whole minutes.
Amazing.
Fair play.
I think though as well, I enjoy that. I would enjoy that as well, just to see them, you know, enjoying the magic of cinema and stuff as well. You know, it's just so great, and it's never lost on them, which is amazing.
That's it. Do you know what I noticed as well, right? So every kids film that I go to see, it's like, it doesn't matter what's in it. It's for the kids. They're the world's worst / best critics, because they always tell you everything was great. But there's always like, I don't know what it is. I think it's when the music comes in some scenes to like heighten the emotion, and you're sat there in the cinema in this enveloping experience, and there's lots of bass and surround sound and stuff, and I always cry.
Oh.
And there was 2 or 3 moments in the Paw Patrol movie, and like, it's not an emotional film.
I know.
Like, it's for toddlers, you know.
Yeah, but you're buying into it. And
yeah. And I'm sat there going, "Come on, Chase, you can do it."
And your kids are like, "Dad, get it together."
Yeah. Thankfully, they're watching the screen and not me trying to sneakily wipe my eyes, you know.
So bringing your kids was just an excuse for you to let out a bit of emotion.
Yeah. It's just an outlet.
Well, one film that isn't, I mean, it definitely is actually emotional. When I watched Redemption of a Rogue, which is this week's podcast, it really kind of hit me in different ways. I'm really, really excited for more people to see it. It's out in cinemas now, and it really kind of hits home, I think, with Irish people, but also it's so mad and wonderful that there's still... It's
definitely mad.
Yeah, but there's still such a like underlying thing of being relatable or real, as mad as it is. It is really kind of real. And that, what I loved as well, what you'll hear in our chat, is the sense of community in the film.
Yeah.
So obviously the director, Philip Doherty, shot it in Cavan, and he's from Cavan. And everyone, the Cavan community, just massively came together to help them out and to help make it, because they obviously had such a low budget. And little things of just, I think it's so Irish in that sense of everyone just helping out, and, you know, getting stuck in, and, you know, we'll worry about that after, you know, all that kind of stuff as well. So it's definitely a really fantastic film. I'm looking forward to more people seeing it. So just as an overall for people who haven't seen it yet, the kind of tagline that they're giving it is, it's a Bible black comedy about a prodigal son returning to his hometown to seek salvation for his sins. So if it doesn't sell it, I'm not sure what will. It's really fantastic.
The comedy in it is as dark as it comes, you know, but it's hilarious. It's a hilariously funny film. And I find myself as well, like just what you were saying about kind of it being community focused. When I was watching it, there's so much I recognized about, I don't know, small town life in a sense, you know. It's kind of, you know, it's based around a small town community and everything, and the practices and the traditions and the wee sort of mini cultures that we have and so on, like in the places where I grew up. But yeah, not afraid to take the hand away, but like,
exactly. Oh, that's so Irish as well, though. Like, even if, you know, in the worst situations, we'll always try and find the funny side of it anyway.
Exactly.
And I was lucky enough to on this week's podcast, I have the director and writer Philip Doherty, I have the lead Aaron Monaghan, and then I also have Ash O'Mara and Kieron Roche as well. So I've got the whole crew in here today to chat about the film. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I will talk to you soon, Jerry.
Talk to you soon, Niamh.
Bye. And just a quick reminder before I hand you over to today's episode, if you enjoy everything that we have to offer for you guys, our podcasts, our short films program, and all of our events that are soon to be coming up, definitely do consider becoming a member or a champion and support Irish Film London. Thanks guys, enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to Philip. Aaron, Kieron, and Ash, thank you so much for coming on to the Irish Film London podcast. We're delighted to have you all on, not just one of you. Usually it's delighted to have you on, but all of you in one room. And first of all, I just want to say well done on an incredible film. It's absolutely mad and wonderful all at the same time. So thank you all for coming on. So I want to start off with Philip. I want to start with you because you are obviously the writer and director of the film. So talk to me about the inspiration and kind of what the writing process was like.
Yeah, well, hello, Niamh. Thanks for having us on. It's a relief that you liked the film. So the writing process was a long and arduous journey, I guess. I guess the story comes from personal experiences, a lot of it. The world that you see, Cavan, or the version of Cavan, is pretty much the world I grew up in all its kind of absurdity and larger than life, eccentric characters with that sardonic, droll wit. So yeah, I grew up with those people and grew up with those characters, and I guess the main inspiration for that was for the world of the film, but for the story itself. I spent a lot of time in my 20s kind of, leaving Cavan and going traveling around different parts of the world. But it always ended in some sort of shameful failure where I'd return with this guilt riding on my shoulders, penniless and broke, and stuck in Cavan for quite a while before I could go again. So I think that was probably that sort of prodigal son character that was returning home was probably always there. And it was a story idea I had for a while. Coming from that was kind of this character returning to his hometown to settle old scores and face up to his past, but he'd one day to live, and that was kind of I wasn't quite sure what form that would take. So I started writing Redemption of a Rogue, but it wasn't a case where this is my first screenplay. I had some money to write a film from Cavan County Council, a small amount of money to make a film, enough to make a small short, really. And so I wrote 3 other screenplays before this, and they were kind of like these sprawling, plotless, wacky comedies that any producer that read them, not only did they not like them, they just wouldn't answer the phone after. It was kind of, but that's what kind of came out. I was kind of learning how to write a screenplay, and so it took me a while probably to have the courage to write Redemption of a Rogue, because it was, coming from quite a dark emotional place as well. But eventually I did get the courage to write Redemption of a Rogue and really go after it. And then when I was writing it, all those personal experiences came back to me. I didn't set out to write a comedy. That was just a story that I was writing. And yeah, I grew up in a family that was very Catholic, so there was figurines all over the house. I was brought to church a lot as a kid. So it wasn't that far-fetched for me to imagine this supernatural world with all these religious figurines and talking statues and these things happening. And yeah, growing up in Cavan, the GEA ran it like the mafia, pretty much, as I'm sure a lot of towns in Ireland. And so yeah, things like being bet up on the dance floor for enjoying yourself, and all the sort of hurts and things like that would probably have come from a very personal place. And I guess one of the important things I wanted to kind of say with it, or not intentionally say, it just kind of came out when I was writing it, was to kind of lift the lid on how surreal and how the crazy places that the mind can go in it when you're in a very dark space, but also kind of really show how absurd and how surreal those roads that you can go down, or the mind can let you go down, and to show it in as honest, but how comedic and how surreal and how strange and bizarre that is, and to kind of lift the lid on that, and to show that no matter how dark things can get, that there's always humor that can pull you out of that. There's always comedy that can take you out of that unbearable situation. So
absolutely. Well, that definitely shines through, and I think it's quite an Irish thing though as well, that sometimes Irish people just make the best out of even the most awful situations. But as you said, it's set in Cavan, which is where you're from. So was it quite satisfying to shoot something from where you're from and to involve the Cavan community in the process?
Yeah, completely. Well, I don't think I could have done this anywhere else. There's no way I could have done this anywhere else in the world, because we had a very small amount of money for the shoot. It was kind of in my it's kind of looming over me for a while, because how are you going to do this on such a small budget? It's just not possible. And that's what everyone was telling me, especially with the script that I wrote, Redemption of a Rogue, and it was quite an ambitious script. I actually bottled it at one stage, and wrote a different version of Redemption of a Rogue, which Aaron sadly read.
He got duped. He signed up to a wrong film.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was chatting to Aaron before about the storyline and stuff like that, but it was, with the amount of money I had, which was 45,000 for the shoot, producers saying this wasn't possible. So I wrote a different version, which was just lads shouting at each other in rooms. So it wasn't very cinematic, or it wasn't very visual. And but then Shane Connaughton, he's a friend of mine. He's a screenwriter. He read both versions of the script, and he basically said, "Don't do this other version. You have to go after Redemption of a Rogue." So I guess there was a big community in Cavan. I was running an art space with a few other people, visual artists. And there was this great community and network of people that were making big theatre production and big installations. You know, a lot of designers, visual artists, musicians, actors, builders. And I think everyone just rode in behind us, because we hadn't done a film project. And it was just wonderful for all those people to come together. They're all extraordinary, talented people. So we all just went for it and did it. And it was that, because of that community of artists, that we were able to kind of maybe make something on this scale.
Well, it definitely felt like there was a community vibe to it, for sure. And Aaron, I'd love to chat to you about your character, Jimmy, who is a troubled man with a lot going on under the surface. So talk me through Jimmy, and kind of then how you came about Redemption of a Rogue.
Yeah, it's curious to hear Philip talking about his 20s and coming home in failure and stuff like that. Like, there's obviously a lot of that in it. What Philip didn't say is the good thing that has come out of him being in Cavan, which is, like, you know, he's talking about the Arts Collective there, of which he was front and center of it. So, like, we're around the same age, myself and Philip and I, like, and we kind of went off on similar but different paths. And my path took me very much out of Cavan, to the point where I wanted to go back, because there was this huge, brilliant, emerging art scene happening. And it was very, very much, a lot of the cause of that was Philip. He just had this amazing group of people behind it. And that's, we've been talking for years about trying to do something together, and dates or whatever never quite worked out. And I remember sitting in his office in this theater that he was running, that we used to do youth drama in. And I was like, he was like, I'm going to write a film and I want you to be in it. And in my head, I was like, I'm doing it. I'm just doing it anyway. Before he's told me, I just agreed to it, because I wanted to do a Philip film, and I wanted to do a Cavan film. And then he went through the story of it, and it's like, it's typical Philip stuff. It's metaphorical, it's hilarious, it's dark, it's ambitious. And I hope Philip will forgive me for saying this, but I always wonder, like, that Philip's ambition is massive, and sometimes don't think that he's not burdened by things like practicality, like in the way that I am. So when he's talking about, like, how much money do you have to make this, Philip, and he told me how much, and I was like, you're not going to be able to hire a rain machine for like a week on that, and you've got rain in 80% of it. But I was like, he'll do it. We'll find a way to do it. I think, if this is right, Philip, I think you kind of said that we would be filming it within a year, like a year later. Mm-hmm. And I did read that version of it, and I don't really know what to say about that. Like, you're very hard on yourself about it, but I remember kind of, I will be honest, I was like, oh, it's not the one that we talked about. But
you said you were going to do it, Aaron. So
absolutely, I was in, and I don't mind saying I was disappointed that we suddenly weren't going to make the film that he sat in his office talking about. And then shortly after that, I remember, I think I got a phone call from me. I remember this quite clearly, that I think you talked about Pat McCabe and Shane Connaughton, and he kind of said, no, make that. And you just had this new energy and enthusiasm for this other version. You know, you'd gone off this other track and you'd come back to it, and you kind of come back to it with much more fervor. And yeah, I mean, the script arrived and it was terrific. And like I think we did a good bit of talking about it and kind of throwing ideas around like at the very last minute, and like yeah, and then I don't know. Well, I was in anyway. I was like, we're going to make a film in Cavan. It's kind of unique that a county council will put their name on a film. And I mean, like the arts scene, the arts office, and the council have been very good to me over the course of my career. So yeah, I was like, you have to do this, not a question. That's not talking about the film. That's my commitment to it.
No, definitely. And so was there kind of an area there for it to be kind of a quite collaborative thing because you were in on it so early on?
No, in fairness, no. I mean, like what I think what Philip pitched originally is kind of what ended up on the page. And it was, I think we did a day in Smock Alley where I think I just asked questions of things, and I was like, what, you know, things that I didn't necessarily understand. I asked him questions, and we kind of talked through stuff. Is that right, Philip? Did we?
Yeah, we did a day, and you were very generous with some great ideas as well. And but yeah, you ironed out a good few things as well. It was just good to get someone from another perspective reading it in first. It's the first time reading it through. Actually, was a great thing to do for me. Yeah.
That was exciting. Yeah.
And Kieron, your role of Damien, which is Jimmy's brother, who also has a lot of kind of underlying issues going on. Particularly with a group of people who love to kind of threaten him throughout the film. But in your head, what does Damien do? Like, we know that he used to look after his father for a few years when he was sick, and we do kind of get snippets of an insight into him. But in your head, as the actor of having a fully fleshed out idea of him, chat to us about Damien.
Well, I had to come up with ideas pretty quick. I came onto it pretty late, and it was my understanding that we would be doing the lads shouting at each other in rooms movie. So
that's what you signed up for.
Yeah, I was bitterly disappointed on the first day set. But yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of not washing, basically. It just seemed kind of feral.
So method,
yeah. Methods weeks before the shoot. I don't know. He just kind of seemed fully formed on the page. There was something kind of feral about him, something kind of erratic, and seemed like a guy who couldn't quite get right, had a lot of resentment against Jimmy, obviously, for obvious reasons, and kind of wanted what he felt was coming to him, which, without giving too much away, I don't know.
Well, I really believed that the two of you were brothers. There's kind of an inherent weirdness and shorthand about the brothers that worked really well tonally between the two of you. So how did you both kind of develop that shorthand, or was it just kind of on the spot in the moment?
I think it was just absolutely necessarily in the moment. Like with Kieron come on late. I never met Kieron before, which is really unusual in Dublin because everybody knows everybody. It's a small artistic circle. But he came in on his first day. I think his first shot was the fight. So we just had like, there was no stunts or anything like that.
I was just going to ask, did you both do your own stunts?
No, it was, I mean, it was all just improvised. And that was like, I don't know what it was like for you, Kieron, but like, just kind of going, how do I begin to slap this person in the face? And so, yeah, that was a big one for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we didn't. Shane Brohan, I think, did one stunt for me, just to give Shane a shout out. And yeah, I was nervous. I was nervous coming on set first day because it was late and it was all kind of new to me, and I was trying not to get inside my own head too much. And so it was very helpful that the first thing we would do would be so physical, with kind of a little block, and we just kind of improvise it and see what goes on. And I think two of us had a conversation where it was like, can I wrangle you about a bit? Yeah. Can I wrangle you about a bit? Yeah. Can I throw you? Can I slap you? You know what I mean? And that kind of shook the cobwebs off. And if there was any dynamic or tone or whatever to be established, I suppose it was kind of done there and then through violence.
Well, it felt like you guys had like workshopped it and, done, kind of days together and everything. So it's pretty impressive that was all, but it also felt really kind of rich and in the moment. So clearly it was.
Yeah.
I'd love to move on to Ash, your character, Masha, who is Polish. I think she's such she's just such a welcomed character in the film. She's so warm, and I think she's kind of like that little beacon of hope and kind of positivity that the film yearns for as well. So what was your kind of prep for the role, and did you have any inspirations or what was your work pre the film like?
Learn the lines.
Nice.
No, I don't know, like, God, it feels so long ago now. Read over it a lot, thought about her a lot, kind of had conversations with Philip of like, who is she? She's the outsider, but yet I think she is the outsider, but it's so freeing when you're the outsider because you don't care. And she has this kind of, she doesn't care what people think about her, which is kind of her superpower in such, I feel, with Masha, that she kind of, in her reckless, she kind of owns it. She kind of goes for what she wants and she doesn't let things get in her way. I think she feels hard and she hasn't had a chance in this world to be able to feel or to love. So when someone else shows a small bit of kindness to her, she begins to open up in her own way. I feel. Did I answer that?
Yeah, you did very well as well. No, that definitely comes across because you definitely see that she is kind of yearning for someone to welcome her or to love her.
There's a huge want in her, and I think everyone wants to be wanted or accepted. Isn't that all what we kind of want in the world? So I think when she sees him and he stands up for her once, I think something in her head has opened that she would have been very closed off beforehand. So definitely. It's lovely in that way.
And so kind of then contrasting from Masha as the kind of little beacon of hope. So Aaron, how did you find kind of your process for Jimmy of stepping in and out of such a kind of character who's in such a dark place for pretty much a lot of the film?
Mm-hmm. In some ways, playing a dark character in a very colorful film is kind of easy. I mean, the temptation is to make it funny, but it's actually my job to be the straight guy in the film, and everybody else is kind of outrageous. Really, they're very funny characters. And then I think with Masha, he sees somebody, he recognizes somebody who, like him, sees the world in a different way that isn't all about ga and begrudgery and judgment. And I think that's kind of what opens him up. I mean, I think I was worried throughout so much of my delivery in this film is it's kind of counter to what I get cast as a lot of the time. But my delivery throughout most of the film is it never kind of rises above a kind of a tone where I'm just doing this all the time. And I was kind of worried, like, is there going to be anything intonationally different about this film? But no, it was that was the challenge, just holding your nerve and kind of being the straight guy to all the madness that's happening around him. And that's the kind of joy of it. Everybody else makes the film work for me, I think.
Exactly. Actually, that's what I was going to move on to was there's so many strong performances throughout, even in smaller scenes. So kind of for such a large cast, there's no one that drops the ball. You were really kind of blessed with a really strong supporting cast with some familiar faces that people might know, like Liz Fitzgibbon and Kevin McGahern, and then some new ones as well that we haven't seen before. So Philip, what was it like, the kind of casting process for such a kind of actually really what feels like a bit of an ensemble piece?
Yeah, the casting process. So as regards the main cast and supporting cast, I mean, I pretty much knew everyone on that from theatre, really, not film. I'd seen everyone on stage or I'd worked with them before. But then the supporting cast coming around it. So I'd done a lot of theatre in Cavan with community casts. So I kind of, in my head, I had to pick potentially of all these people, to work with. So yeah, I did auditions in Cavan, open auditions for a lot of just to see who was there, because I wanted to kind of see everyone in the area that would have interest. And I've done open auditions for theatre before, and you get 4 people turning up, and then when I did the call out for a film, like there was like over 1,000 trying to get into auditions. It was outrageous. We had to cut it off at one point. Paula McQuillan was the girl that was coordinating all of that, and she just, I don't know how she did it. She did an extraordinary job. But I tried to see everyone, and I took big groups at a time, and then whittled it down, and there was a lot of young performers as well. So that whole process, but it kind of showed that there was still magic in films, that people had such a huge interest in the eccentric characters coming in as well. So yeah, I had a big pick from that to choose from, and then a lot of the actors that I would have worked with before as well to come in. But you're right, they all made my job very easy. They were all brilliant, and yeah, it was great to work with those characters who kind of had the same spirit of those characters anyway coming into it. But yeah, they were all a lot of them were seasoned performers in their own right as well.
So you've touched on there that you have a big background in theatre as well, which you all do. And I'd love to kind of get everyone's take on this as well, is how did you find kind of film differing from theatre, and kind of do you prefer one to the other, or what do you love about one and what do you hate about the other, or kind of just because it's actually quite rare to be able to chat to creatives who do it all, guys. You do it all. So I want to hear kind of what did you find different or the same? So I'll start with Philip.
Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I love both art forms. That's a very diplomatic thing to say. So I had made a couple of things. So how I started doing anything in film was when I had a company called the Gonzo Theatre. Like, it was my own fringe company. I mean, everyone, I guess, has one when they're starting out. But we started making these promo videos with a filmmaker called Finn Keenan, who's now a huge music video filmmaker. But like the promo videos were nearly getting more of a reaction than the plays that I was putting on. So that was the real kind of when I first got a thirst for it. And then we made a web series on Storyland called The Begrudgers. And then I left it because I went to Dublin and started working in theatre. So I had a little bit of a crash course because of The Begrudgers. But then when I came back into it, it was quite scary. It was all brand new. And I absolutely loved it. I really did. Like, I mean, writing the screenplay was a completely different thing. It was thinking visually, and structure has to be very, very tight. So that was a completely different process, and it took a long time, which, I've been guilty of the past for writing plays quite quickly and putting them on stage before they're ready. But you can't do that with a screenplay. It just won't work. So that was a whole discipline. And then working with, like, my brother was production designer, so I was well used to working with him, but he was very experienced at working with in film. And then working with Bertie Wagner, the cinematographer, that was a complete new experience. And I loved working with him. He was very generous, very creative. I went to see a short film in Clonus, the short films at Clonus Film Festival. It was just, and I saw Wave, which was one of the films, and I just loved the way it looked. It was a complete coincidence that film I got to see. I mean, how often do we get to see short films in Clonus? And then when the producer said that Bertie might be interested in shooting it, it just felt right, because he had this wonderful aesthetic. So working with him was great, working with producers, but all the prep that went into it was really different, and working with the different departments. And yeah, I guess there's my friend Darren Kelly sent me a video of a French filmmaker on set. It was kind of a parody. It's him walking around and just getting 10 questions every 20 seconds, and it's just batting. And it was a bit like that at times, but I absolutely loved it. But it was a great team that we were working with, and the whole post-production editing process, hanging out with Alan Quigley, the editor. Paul Thomas Anderson made a comment there recently on a video that I saw. Someone asked him the very technical question of, what do you look for in a good editor? And he answered, just someone to hang out with that I like hanging out with. And he's right, because you just, the editor, you spend your life, it's your new brother or your best friend. And I love kind of that whole process as well. Yeah, I completely fell in love with film in the whole making of this. But I think there's so many similarities between theatre and film the end of the day, it's a story, and it's the actors that are at the forefront of the audience, and it's them that the audiences connect with in both art forms. So we're just sort of helping that process, hopefully.
And Kieron, how did you find the difference? Have you done a lot of film prior to this?
No, none at all, really. Like, I mean, yeah, almost exclusively theatre. A good chunk of which has been with Phil. Like, he was the first play I did outside, out of drama school, was a play with Phil called The Birthday Man. And yeah, so this is my first time really having any experience with film. And yeah, so I was kind of learning on the fly. I remember some teacher, lecturer, or whatever saying, the thing you hear all the time, which is, stage is big, screen is small. And I was like, that sounds stupid. And then you come to something like Redemption, it's like, well, that's completely out the fucking you can't be small here at all. But in terms of like the learning curve, I don't know, yeah, it's kind of boring stuff. There's just technical things I had to get my head around that are quite different, and things you just need to get comfortable with. But once I did, it was a ball, particularly on this set, because I didn't get rained on as well all that much, you know what I mean? So I stayed dry for the majority of it. So I could just go around my hot water bottle and my tea going, this is nice. Yeah, no, just, yeah, they're both very, very different. I feel I haven't done much of the film to say what those differences are with much certainty, but different in their own ways, great in their own ways, and it's definitely something I'd like to do a lot more of in film. Definitely,
Definitely.
Sure.
And Aaron, you're the same. You kind of come from a theatre background as well, but you also had a film in the Galway Film Festival as well that was last weekend called Ghostlight, which was fantastic. So you're kind of juggling the two as well. How are you finding that?
Yeah, I'm coming to the conclusion that they're the same thing, and I love watching films. I've always loved watching films, but the making of films, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, I kind of hated it. I just, I'm partly, I don't anymore. I've journeyed to this love of them, but like, I used to do so much theatre, and theatre requires so much of your energy, so much of your time, so much of your commitment. And it's, I don't know, I like being busy. I like a lot being asked of me. I like the gratification and the satisfaction of theatre and the immediacy of it. So, you're playing a role like 7 or 8 nights a week to a couple of hundred people. And then somewhere in the middle of the day, you're kind of, I don't know, you're doing a day on set where they're kind of treating you like a kid. And they're kind of going, don't move anywhere now, we'll get you your dinner, and and you might only be doing 3 lines 4 times, and you're like, Jesus, I could do this in my sleep. So I found that really hard to I find it really hard to kind of weigh up in my head to kind of give the making of film any sort of gravity or kudos. And as well, it's funny what Philip was saying about like asking people to audition for theatre and getting a handful of people, but if it's film, people are out the door. It just has. I used to kind of feel kind of angry about that like theatre just wasn't on the same level of respect, and it was, and yet I used to think it required so much more energy. But in the last like 10 years, I've really kind of I've had a respect for. I realized that my lack of respect for the process of filmmaking was my lack of understanding for what's going into it in terms of the development, in terms of getting people in front of the camera. And I used to feel as an actor in front of the camera, I'd so little control, like everything, like you were the least, and you are into a great degree, the least important thing in the shot to a large degree. Whereas in theatre, you are kind of the most important thing. And I suppose I've realized now that like, learning a lot more and even making stuff and kind of been involved in the making of stuff for camera. I have a lot more respect for it, and I realized that like it's exactly the same process as an actor. It really is. It's literally just being alive to the moment and letting circumstances around you happen, and like you obviously kind of craft your performance and you decide where it's going to go, but you also, I used to always say that the moment on stage that you were looking for is the moment where you could just yield to whatever happens, to whatever the other actor's going to give you, or whatever, you know, way the play is going to come out of you tonight. And I used to think that film isn't about that. It's about reproducing the same moment again and again and again. But it's not at all. Actually, it's exactly the same thing. And I find it a very enjoyable process now. And a lot of that's down to Redemption of a Rogue as well, getting to kind of go through the whole journey of a character throughout a film. That was very helpful. That's very long. Sorry.
No, that probably really, that's why it really suited yourself and Kieron to not have done a lot of kind of prep work before, do you know, as in having being able to get together, because then it was so live at the time and it felt so in the moment, like theatre does. And Ash, what about you? How do you find, because you're also a stage actor as well, how do you find the difference between the two?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of the same as Aaron, that I played day players a lot before I ever did this before. And again, it's an energy thing, I think, as well, because when you go into theatre, you might have to do a show for 2 or 3 hours and you're prepping maybe 2 hours before. Well, you're prepping the whole day, but essentially you're maybe doing your warm-up for an hour before you go on and all that jazz, but you're prepping the whole day. But to use the energy when you're filming, to hold your energy in the right way, when you might be having to wait and getting to know this character inside out, there's a lot of prep work, you know, like when you come into a play, you're lucky you have rehearsal time. You might have 3 or 4 weeks, well, 4 weeks now if you're lucky, but with this work, you prep on your own a lot. And I think that for me was very unusual, because you're kind of on your own, and then you have a moment with your director and whoever your screen partner is. Sometimes when you're walking down a hall before you say the lines. But luckily on this, Philip was amazing. He was really freeing to us to let us make our own choices, and then would also go back and go, well, I think about this and think about this. And again, it's to play a character for the whole thing, like to play in that kind of for the whole film, has completely opened my eyes in a completely different way to go, oh yeah, no, this is cool. I'd love to be doing more film like everyone else would. But again, the team was so lovely. Like it was such a nice, open team, and everyone wanted the best for it. There was no one who wanted this piece to be bad. Not that anyone ever wants things to be bad, but I mean, like everyone was in it to win it, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And myself and Ash were actually at a chat today, which kind of links into this quite nicely as well. We were talking about actors and how to kind of cope with downtime and in between jobs and all that kind of stuff. And one thing that was said that that's actually quite nice is like the difference between, one of the kind of differences between theatre and film is that with theatre, you're kind of so in it for so long together, and then it's over and that's it. And Polly McGlynn was saying, you know, there's nearly kind of a bit of a mourning going on there after. Whereas with film, obviously you do finish, but then you get to revisit it again when it's when you're in the editing stage, or when it's finished and you get to see it again and you kind of get to see everyone again. So I think that's quite nice as well, that it kind of, that process and that experience is dragged out, which is quite nice. I did want to ask, Aaron, you touched on it there. I need to ask about the rain machine, although it genuinely wouldn't be surprising if it did rain for the entire shoot, but I imagine there was one.
No, it snowed.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I wanted to know what that was like going to work, knowing that you were most likely going to be soaked to the bone for the majority of the day, cast and crew, I imagine.
There was one day, I think it was towards the end of the shoot, I remember looking at the call sheet and going, oh, I don't get rained on today.
Wow.
And by the end of the day, I think something had moved and I did get rained on. I don't know what, I think it was a unit move or something. It was, I don't know. It was like, it's obviously tough, but it's your job. I mean, like, it's kind of like what I was saying about the theater thing as well. Like, I've had horrible things to have to endure on theater, but it's your job. I'm not complaining about it. It's your job, and we all got wet and we all got cold, but like there was it was hard. It was cold, and yeah, I don't know in my head, and maybe I'm a martyr, but I'm like, this is what the shot requires. This is what the story requires and the play requires. But like you'd be around people and you'd have people like Michelle, the makeup artist, and Noelle Slack, who did, you know, the art direction, or not the art, but the props and stuff like that. And the look of concern on their face was kind of like, they were amazing. And they kind of say, you're kind of turning blue now. I used to know, like, if it got too cold, my head just used to kind of retreat inside itself. It just was like, it's costing too much energy to think, so I'll just be quiet for a moment. But like, it's the job, and we all got wet, and it was no matter how wet you were, you were always looking out at like guys holding up rain machines.
Exactly, it's not just the cast, the crew as well. Everybody, you have to remember.
And as well, like, you know, like this is the job. It's 80% raining in this script. And those this wasn't one rain machine, it was 3 rain machines that those guys built, and they will never get enough credit for that. Like, there was one, is this right, Philip? The rig where we were fighting in the street, they had built this incredible rig that on a scaffold that crossed the entire street and was meters and meters long. Like, the entire street was raining. So like, you're never feeling too sorry for yourself, because you're kind of going, this is fucking amazing how this is being made. So that's where your head goes a lot of the time.
And Ash, did you say it snowed one day?
Well, the first day I came down to shoot, it was snowing. Like, it was just, when was it? June or February? June, Jeremy, February. And it was it was just snowing. It was like, it was minus degrees. It was cold. And I was like, oh wow, this is gonna be interesting when the rain falls and it turns to ice.
And Kieron, what were you going to say there? You were just inside with your hot water bottle. I don't know if you can comment on this.
Yeah, no, I got off pretty scot-free. No, am I mistaken in saying they were called the Water Boys? the rain dudes?
Yeah. Well, they had, we called the Rain Men. We wanted to turn up at the rap party dressed as Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
And then there was another nickname called the Water Boys.
Yeah.
That's so great. But Philip, I wanted to chat to you about the music in the film. There's quite a lot of music. Throughout the film, there's kind of intervals of music on the street mostly, which I loved. And like, the music particularly stood out to me. It was kind of one of those films where I actually came away wanting to go back and listen to the soundtrack. So was it important to you to have a lot of Irish musicians? And I also see that Robbie Perry composed your music, who's also from Cavan. So is that a kind of a long-standing relationship? And talk me through that.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, so the original title for this was the long-winded and Redemption of a Rogue, a blues opera. Slightly pretentious title. So it got shortened quite a lot to Redemption of a Rogue. So Robbie Perry is a composer and a musician. He's done a lot with Dead Can Dance, and he's done a lot of his solo work. But I've always had live music in the theatre, and Robbie's been one of the main guys I've worked with and one of the main musicians, and he's an extraordinary talent. So he was on board pretty much at the very start, like with my brother Joe in production design and Aaron. So it was he had read like an early draft of Redemption of a Rogue. I read it to him in the kitchen, I think, like one of the early drafts that wasn't for anyone else. I wouldn't have shown Aaron that draft. So he was on board pretty much early on, and so that collaboration is really, really important. And music, as you see, is very important. It does take a surreal turn. It does. The other world is starting to encroach with the extreme weather representing that other world kind of coming through in that undercurrent. And it kind of lifts into this sort of dream world with the musicians. And Robbie is such a brilliant musician and composer, and he really helps bring the emotion of the film through. And also, I kind of wanted to have those surreal moments where it just doesn't stop for a song, but more it's kind of a sly narration that they're moving the story like a Greek chorus, moving the narration forward as well. And Robbie composed a lot of the music, original composition, but there's a lot of other artists from Cavan, like Lisa O'Neill, like Kieran O'Neill, like Dara Slack. So the voice of the area are a lot of the musicians are from Cavan and Monaghan and Robbie Perry himself. And that was really, really important to me. And hopefully that comes across, that everyone's kind of from that same land or that same place in the film.
It does. And kind of chatting about community then, there is a kind of a sort of a mob mentality kind of as well throughout the town, the townspeople, especially in the scene where Masha is singing in the pub, you know, that kind of not wanting one of their own in the town. So Ash, like, how did it feel playing that outsider? I know you kind of commented on it a little bit earlier, but you know, that outside, the outsider in that kind of tight-knit community, you were just coming in there to mess stuff up.
Well, I guess I'm from Dublin anyway. They didn't like me. No, I'm only messing. No, because I'm an old Jackie, a townie coming in. No, I loved her fire. Like she's electric, and she kind of doesn't take no for an answer. Which she's really persistent in this film. Like so much so she might be called a stalker if it was opposite turned around. Like if it was the boy chasing the girl. Sorry, there's a 1-year-old's birthday going downstairs. That's why I'm trying to puff this. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I think for me with Masha, she was so fiery and she kind of knew the area and she kind of understood her place in the area. So when her place began to get jolted a little bit with someone standing up for her, I think that kind of off-centered her a bit, but yet she wanted to push forward and see it through. She's just so fiery, and characters like that aren't written. You know, she never talks about her family. You know, we don't know if her mom or dad or brothers or whatever. She never talks about ex-boyfriends. She talks about what she wants. And that's the credit to Philip, that he wrote a female within this that just is only after her own wants and her own needs, which can be really unusual.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Philip.
Definitely, especially for female parts. I think they're developing so much. And I think Masha she's so crucial to this film.
Completely, but without being on the nose, because you do watch some things where you can feel a female role could be shoehorned in for, you know, what we need right now. But this felt very fluid and real, do you know?
And was it the kind of dark undertone? I don't even know if undertones is the right word. It's just a tone of particularly of Jimmy being suicidal were dealt with in a very kind of subversive, almost matter of a fact way. The scene where he goes into the hardware store, it kind of is in my mind for that. But so the whole kind of not dancing around these topics, was that really something that you wanted present in the film, Philip?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the emotion that was the main kind of feeling that was running through the me at the time when I was writing the script. So it came from a very personal place, I think, and so I tried to be as honest and try and give an insight into where the mind can potentially go. So there wasn't. That just wrote kind of in a very free way. It wasn't something I overanalyzed and just tried to write it as honestly as possible. But yeah, that opening scene in the hardware store, it's quite deadpan. But I haven't said this before. I wouldn't be the type, believe it or not now, Niamh, to go into a hardware store too often. But I had to go into the hardware store to just even to buy rope just to see how this would go.
Method, once again, get a director to be the actor, knows how it feels.
Well, I went into this old hardware store. I won't say where, because if I did, everyone would know it in Cavan. And I went in to buy rope. And he actually, a lot of it was him, you know, really challenging me on the size and the length of it and what it's for. I couldn't tell him it was for a film and research for this scene. So it kind of grew in awkwardness. But yeah, so that scene kind of came from me, you know, doing research. It kind of got out of hand a little bit. But I love black comedy. It's always a thing I've been drawn to. I think it's the purest expression of life because it's cruel and hilarious at the same time. It's dark and it's funny, and you have good days and bad days, or good moments and hilarious moments and sad. And I never set out to write a comedy, just write the story. But maybe I just can't resist the comedic moments and those cringy moments that happen along the way. But yeah, I tried to write it as honestly as I could, and that's what ended up on the page.
Well, it really, really is fantastic, and I can't wait for more people to see this film. I really can't. So a bit of a rogue question, excuse the pun. What if you could describe Redemption of a Rogue in one word, what would it be? I mean, if the word goes into a sentence, I'm not gonna hate, but kind of roughly, if you could describe it to everyone, because it's so hard to describe. I even tried to do this, so that's why I'm putting it out there for you guys to try it. So, Kieron, do you want to give it a go?
No.
Okay.
One word I'm going to do sentence. You can take out the word. You know, one word keeps coming back to me about it for many reasons is maybe people will understand this when they actually see the film, which I hope they do. Is specificity. I don't know if you know what I mean by that. It's just the town, the people, the humor. It's very, very specific, especially to Cavan. And I don't know, it's my opinion, the more specific you make something, the more universal you make it. And there's many themes in this, without even being tied to Cavan, are very, very universal. So specificity is the word I would use. That's my answer.
That's a good one. Because even, to be honest, like even as mad as the film is, it was points in it where it was very relatable, or very kind of, you could see that happening in front of you, or like I know that person, that person, I've got one of those in my life, or something like that. So definitely. Aaron, what about you?
That's a really hard one, Niamh. It's like,
I should have put this out there before, so you guys could.
I don't know. I just keep on thinking of the word irreverent, but like that's not. I don't know. I think it's a Martin McDonagh, Edgar Wright, Quentin Tarantino-esque religious allegorical snapshot of modern small town Ireland.
She said one.
I mean, if that doesn't make you want to go and see it, I really don't know what would. What about you, Ash?
Freedom. I just think the piece is totally about freedom. That's what I like, bonkers freedom, but freedom all the same. Like maybe love and freedom. Yeah, freedom. I don't know.
And Philip?
Wet.
Put that on a poster. Yeah.
Different audience. Yeah, I know. And two words, I guess, letting go.
Definitely. Well, as I said, I'm really looking forward to a lot more people seeing this film. So, Philip, can you tell our listeners where and when people will be able to see Redemption of a Rogue?
Yes, so the 27th of August, 7 days after my birthday, it's going to be a national release in cinemas across the country, which is very exciting. I don't know all them cinemas at the moment, but it will be, and Wildcarder will be announcing that. And yeah, hopefully people can come and see it and enjoy it and have a laugh.
Exciting. Well, definitely keep up to date with us on social media, and we will let you know when and where you can see Redemption of a Rogue. And thank you all so much for coming on to talk to me. I wish you all the very best with your journey with Redemption of a Rogue and your own individual future successes. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Niamh.
Thank you.
And that's it from us here today. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you again to the Redemption of a Rogue crew for coming on to chat to me. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and YouTube, so there's no getting away from us. And if you haven't had your short film Fill of the Month yet, go and check out our Irish Film from Home Shorts programme. If you enjoyed the podcast and everything else we have in store for you guys, definitely do consider becoming a member to support us and to get free access to a lot of great films and to attend exciting events in the future. A final thank you to the Irish Emigrant Support Programme and Culture Ireland, who've been brilliant supporters of ours for years. The Irish Film London podcast is produced by me, Niamh Brannigan. We're edited by Owen Bill Cliff, and our theme music is by Kevin MacLeod. Thanks again, and we'll see you again soon.